guess I'm going to start out by telling you that my dad's name was Thomas J. O'Meara, so I'm named after him. And I stole his name for a long time. They called him other names other than that, so I could have the name for myself. But later on, he started to be called Tom. But he was born in 1918 in New York, and he was because of efforts of his family and so forth. He got an education. It was very important to him that we all know that he was an engineer, right? How many times did he say, "I'm an engineer"? And so I think that probably affected all of us. And I think it's important to remember stories about your parents and your grandparents and your great-grandparents. You know, it was the ancient Jews who realized, as they read Bible passages and stories and told stories among themselves, that one of the ways that we have eternal life is that we live through our families and we live through people mentioning us and talking about us over the years. So it's really important for us to do that for our parents, as we would hope that maybe that our children and grandchildren would do for us. And I'm going to tell you a little story about Dad being an engineer. I don't know if everybody knows this, but when Dad was born, it was in the early part of the 20th century, and a lot of things that we have now were not invented yet, right? I mean, a lot of the modern conveniences and things that we rely on hadn't really been invented. And Dad was involved in a lot of those things. He didn't invent them, but he was involved in bringing them into being. One of the things that he was involved in when he was in the Navy, he worked in the Brooklyn Naval Shipyard. When we were younger, those of us that are older in the family remember that he worked in the Brooklyn Naval Shipyard, and he helped put radar onto ships for the first time anybody ever did that. So he was involved in that advance. And ironically, when I was a radar officer, about 22 or 23 years behind that advance that he had done, one of the radar sets that I was responsible for was the same radar system that he had put on the ships. And later on, when I was in the space track system in Diyarbakir, Turkey, and he sent OAO-2 into space, I had the radar site that was first able to detect that it was in proper orbit because I was in the space track system. So in some ways, I got to work with him over the years, but he was very proud of the fact, and we're all very proud of the fact, that he got involved in that. Because he was in the OAO system and worked in the space program, he got involved in the first time that lasers were used. Lasers were not first used for what they're used for in operations and things, but it was to send data from satellites back to the Earth. And so he was involved in the first really practical use of laser technology, and because of that investment and those successes, that a lot of other things have been done with laser and with communication by satellite and all that other kind of stuff. So he had a very exciting life and got involved in some of the terrific things that happened in the 20th century. But I want to tell you a little more personal story about him that illustrate, I think, the kind of relationship that we had with our dad sometimes. That one time John and I were recruited to help put up wallpaper in the
kitchen?
In the kitchen.
It was paneling.
Yeah, huh?
It was paneling.
No, wallpaper.
Oh, okay.
The first time we put up wallpaper in our house.
Better as wallpaper.
Yeah, actually the story goes better with wallpaper.
Okay.
It doesn't go well with paneling, so I made up this story. Let me tell it.
Okay.
Anyway,
We didn't have any panels.
the first thing we had to know was that Dad was an engineer, and that meant that one of the things that meant was that when you did anything, that you had to make sure that you had all the right tools, right? You had to have all the right tools. If you needed if the job called for a wrench, then a pair of pliers was not going to do it. And if it called for a 4-inch wrench, then a 4-inch wrench it was going to be, and not a 3-inch wrench, right? You'd never ever start a job without making sure you have all your tools. And the second thing is that you would read the instructions several times, because he was an engineer and we would do things exactly correct and not do anything based on what we thought might work and so forth. So it was important that he was an engineer. And so the other thing is that we were going to use a ladder, and so we had to check it out and look at it and read the instructions and make sure we didn't step on the top step. And Dad was going to show us how you put up wallpaper. You have to match, the wallpaper and measure everything and so forth. It was right up his job. An engineer had to be doing this. And so as he began to instruct us how to do it, he got about halfway through the first sequence, and the engineer was wearing moccasins. I saw somebody has them
Somebody
on.
had moccasins on?
he had moccasins
Might be
on.
one of the kids. Mayor?
No, I thought it was, I don't know. Anyway, okay, he was wearing moccasins, and the next thing you know, a moccasin went into the paste.
I remember.
And the shoe got full of stuff, and then John said, "Oh, is this how we do it exactly?" Just like, huh?
What page is that on?
Yeah, where is that in the instructions? Maybe we shouldn't be wearing moccasins, Dad. Okay. So,
Where you live?
huh?
It's his story. Just
Yeah, I'm making this up, Kathy. So
It was actually you and him.
No, I remember the
I remember
moccasin
the
going in the bucket.
There you go. So there is some factual basis for the story, Kathy. Anyway, I want to tell you about our mother, who was the first baseman for the Evander Childs softball team in the Bronx, and I thought when they had that advertisement, what was it, for Walgreens or something, that would do the picture really fast and show that. Remember that lady that was throwing the baseball that the kid took the picture up to? That reminded
Yes.
reminded me that could have been Mom, as far as I'm concerned. And of course the difference in character. I remember when the priest said when Mom died, said that you know, we know your father was much more prominent than your mother. Everybody said, "You're crazy." Mom played first base for the Evander Childs baseball team. There's no way that was true. But Mom's special gift was the way she cared for each one of us personally, and made sure that we got exactly whatever we wanted to do. Some people would interpret her as being very strong and aggressive about her own views, but once she got behind what we wanted to do, we found out it was really us that she was advocating for and never for herself. And I'll give you an example of something that happened to me that illustrates the way she was toward us. Is that I had just become a finalist in trying to get into the Air Force Academy, and one of the things I had to do in order to qualify to go on to the next step and be considered to go was that I had to go out to the Naval Air Station on the eastern end of Long Island to have a physical. So I go to bed expecting that I have to be there at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then I'm going to get up about 4 o'clock. And it gets to be about 10 minutes after 2, and Mom is shaking me, and she says, "It's foggy out, you got to get up early, we're going to get out there." And I said, "Well, Mom, we need to call them and tell them we can't make it." And she said, "You're going to get out there, no matter what it takes, we're going to get you out there." So here we go, leaving the house and driving down Southern State Parkway with me sticking my head out the right side and her sticking her head out the left side to make sure that we didn't run into anybody, proceeding at about 11 miles an hour. And we got there, and I got through the physical, and I got accepted. But it was her way of saying essentially that if you have to do it, we're going to do it together, and this is the way it's going to be. Okay?
She's trying to get rid of you, Mom.
Yeah. So Ellen, you next?
Yeah, I want to make sure Scott's in the room, because this story's about him.
Scott?
Yeah, where's
Scott.
Scott?